my honourable friend from Ilford North, who I think kicked this sorry excuse of a bill into next week with his comments. I'd also like to thank and congratulate the honourable members for Glasgow North West and Kingston and Surbiton who made their maiden speeches. It's a lovely feeling when you've nailed it. I know what it's like. I'd also like to say that I come at this debate as a governor of Thorpe St Andrews School, an outstanding school, which is a local authority school. I'm very proud of it as well. I'd like to direct my own contribution to today's debate to the education component of this bill, starting with what I believe is to be an overarching aim of this bill, namely to build on the work of the 2010 Education Act. For if that Act could be described as the ignition of an engine to drive the dismantling of our public education system, then this bill is intended to turbocharge it, or as the PM might say, fire up the Quattro Nicky. In my own constituency of Norwich South, the vultures are not just circling in anticipation of the passage of this bill, they're already hacking away at the juiciest cuts. The Inspiration Trust has its beady eye on the Hewitt Local Authority School and the £60 million of land it sits on. Land that belongs to the people of my city, not to what is little more than a corporation masquerading as a so-called educational charity. A secretive, unaccountable corporation in all but name, it has links to the very heart of this government in the form of Theodore Agnew, a Conservative Party donor and non-executive board member, initially at the DfE, but now for the Ministry of Justice. An irony, I'm sure, that hasn't been missed on the parents and pupils of Hewitt, who've seen little in the way of justice when it comes to having a say in their school's future. A situation that will be faced by many more communities if this bill is passed in its current form. In saying that, Mr Deputy Speaker, I recognise that there are good and decent academy chains out there. Academy chains like those run by the Cooperative Schools Trust, which are genuinely accountable and act in the public interest to improve the education of our children. But alas, the Inspiration Trust isn't one of them, and this bill worsens rather than improves the chances of holding them to account.
Will my honourable friend give way on that point?
Yes, I'll give way.
Thank you. Does my honourable friend agree that one of the other problems with this bill is the lack of academies and sponsors who are able and willing to take on the number of schools that the government intends to convert? There are only so many schools that the cooperative can take on. And is he concerned that the schools he described in his own constituency may have little choice other than to be forcibly taken over by the trust he describes?
My honourable friend makes an important and alarming point. And indeed, like many other trusts, it has already gobbled up tens of millions of pounds of public land and buildings, and now, emboldened by this bill, finds its appetite whetted for yet more pickings. Last year, using Freedom of Information requests, the Guardian newspaper investigation revealed that academy schools have paid millions of taxpayer pounds into the private businesses of directors, trustees and their relatives.
Will my honourable friend give way?
Yes, I will.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Given the case he describes in his constituency of Norwich South, does he agree with me that there are real points of concern in this bill about the weaknesses of consultation, and not just consultations about academy status, but of who the identity of the sponsors are?
Yeah, indeed. My honourable friend is quite right. There is neither sufficient consultation nor sufficient scrutiny. Even the Education Select Committee, with its government majority, has said that, and I quote, checks and balances on academy trusts in relation to conflicts of interest are still too weak. Sadly, I see nothing in this bill to remedy that, and much to make it worse. The committee also questioned the so-called not-for-profit branding being used by many trusts and calls for more regulation and greater transparency. Instead, this bill offers less of both and fast-tracks academisation, removing any form of consultation and robbing communities even of the enfeebled fig leaf consultations the 2010 Act offered. A great member of this House, the late Tony Benn, suggested 5 questions to ask those in power. I would ask those of the Inspiration Trust and many other academies. What power have they got? The answer? Too much. Where did they get it from? From the benches opposite. In whose interests do they use it? Well, judging by the money Theodore Agnew is pumping into the party opposite, I speculate it's not ours. To whom are they accountable? Well, according to the Education Select Committee, no one in particular. And, of course, the most important question of all, how do we get rid of them? We can't. Reading this bill, I see nothing in it that seriously challenges this glaring lack of democratic accountability. And as Tony Benn said, anyone who cannot answer the last of those questions does not live in a democratic system. This then goes to the heart of my argument about why we must oppose this bill. This isn't just a smash and grab on our public schools, their buildings, equipment, the very land they sit on, but an attack on the values we, on both sides of this House, should hold dear. The values of democracy, accountability and transparency, especially when dealing with the allocation and use of public funds and giving local communities a real say in their children's education. With 145 academies currently rated as inadequate, nothing in this bill deals with that. And with this Education Select Committee this year saying there was no evidence academisation in or of itself has improved educational standards, we have to question why this bill is before the House. I cannot believe that it is on the basis of a fair and open-minded assessment of the best interests of our constituents and their children. It is their interests that I represent, however, and it is in their interest that I shall vote against this bill and instead for the amendment in the name of my honourable friends. I urge the House to do the same.
Well done.